I think that Harun, as well as Hito Steyerl, they belong to what I like to call a critical paradigm in the world of art. They are not just producing images, they are reconsidering their status as image makers, as artists, filmmakers, as authors, in respect to their labor conditions.
Our world is so visual and full of images that maybe there's a tendency that we unlearn to read them. It's like we take them for a given and sometimes we don't even see them anymore.
Harun was definitely ahead of his time, especially in coming up with his idea of the operational image, an image which does not only record something, but is able to act on something or to produce something. So the image in Harun's idea became some sort of operating system for the world. What really inspired me about Harun's work is his insistence on taking into account his own means of production, meaning his tools, the editing table, cameras, and also his insisting on the fact that basically cinema and the world are not separate and they are interconnected. I specifically remember seeing videograms of a revolution in the early 90s, which at that point in time really was a revelation. It's a collage of found footage from witnesses filming the Romanian uprising and the overthrow of the Ceausescu regime on small mobile cameras. And it was the first insight, I think, into the events of '89 and what they meant, how media had interfered into the events, how they had influenced them, and also brought about these revolutions, essentially.
One also should not forget that Harun was a documentarist, so he was very, very concerned to find out about reality, what shapes reality, and also conflicts, of course. So he's always very close to mechanics of reality production, which is always a question also of technology and of human perception and of society, of power relations.
I think Harun wanted us to realize that we are governed by images. And the only way to get rid from this regime is by becoming agents able to question these images.
One used to think that one could take images of something, but now I think the relation is rather reversed and images take whatever they want from yourself. It hasn't been a secret for a long time that images started basically scanning your lives for all sorts of clues and data about you. So basically we are now more or less embedded into images ourselves and have to sort of deal with it.
Hito Steyerl's work emerges out of a kind of an evolution of the documentary genre as well as Harun's. So documentary in itself is very important because it's these aesthetics of what I like to call an empirical contact with the reality. But now we live in a world where this empirical contact sometimes is impossible because our realities became digital, abstract, intangible. So how can you still convey a documentary attitude when you decide to look at the world when there's nothing you can hold on to? So I think Hito Steyerl is the one that really succeeds in continuing with the ethics of the documentary, so wishing to have access to the real, but realizing that the real is something rather fluid, rather abstract, and yet she pursues these ethics of the real.
I think at this point our approaches are quite different because I don't mind mixing fiction and documentary in my work. I think that's perfectly legitimate, but Harun tried to keep those things rather separate.
Labor for Harun was the equivalent of life. We used to think that labor is something that enslaves us, but labor is the very excuse to have a social life, to enjoy it, to feel productive. The only question is, for whom will it be productive? Whether for someone that exploits us or for ourselves. So you have this wonderful installation, labor in a single shot, where the question is what is work and what is not work? What is leisure? What is productive? What is unproductive?
It was a long-term project I actually did together with him from 2011 to 2014, where we made workshops in 15 cities all over the world and produced films together with students and filmmakers. Harun sometimes has a reputation of being so intellectual and so deep, but it's not complicated. It's very much related to the documentary again, because he wants to find access to the world and not stops.
Some of Harun's films are also very, very funny, especially in some of the observational films, in the cinema verite films, where Harun basically observes people doing whatever it is they are doing that can actually verge into situational comedy. I try to use humor as a way of telling stories, because usually that's when people listen.
足と足の間にあるんではなくて、耳と耳の間にある、つまり脳の中にある。
Sometimes we get desperate because the world doesn't look promising, and yet they work with the ruins of these perceptions. Both Harun and Hito Steyerl, they are able to, recompose and to reactivate energies, positive energies, out of this very sad perception. This is what makes them pragmatists, people who say we have to do something and we should not wait for a better moment than this one.